Where in the Bible does Jesus say that he's God?
Jesus has to say, I am God in those words for you to accept it. Well, I will now take Shahada. If you show me in the Quran where the Quran has Isa saying, I am the Messiah.
It doesn't say that verbatim, but my question to you is, why would it have to say that? Why would Jesus
That's
have to say that?
my question to you. Why does Jesus have to say, I am God, if God the Father says he's God and the creator, and that should be sufficient for me?
God the Father says that Jesus is God?
Hebrews 1, 8-12. The Father says to the Son, your throne, O God, is forever and ever. And then he says to the Son, you're the Lord who created heaven and earth. Hebrews 1, 8-12.
But of the Son, he says, your throne, O God, is forever and ever.
Now, Lewis, did you catch it? But of the Son, he says. Do we need to show you who's the one speaking?
But of the Son, he says, your throne, O God, is forever and ever.
You know who the he is?
No, I don't.
Show him from Hebrews 1, 5.
For to which of the angels did God ever say, you are my son, today I've begotten you? Or again, I will be to him a father, and he shall be to me a son. And again, when he brings the firstborn into the world, he says, let all God's angels worship him.
Lewis, did you catch that? Who's speaking? Who's telling the angels to worship who? Before we move on?
They're saying to worship the Son.
So who's saying that, though?
Well, this would be God Almighty speaking.
Oh, right? Wait. So just like you believe the Quran is Allah's speech, Allah tells you Jesus Messiah is good enough for you. Well, God the Father tells me Jesus' Son, all angels must worship him, and calls him God and creator. Now continue.
Of the angels, he says, he makes his angels winds and his ministers a flame of fire. But of the Son, he says, your throne, O God, is forever and ever.
Who's speaking now, Lewis? Hold on, bro. Take it easy. I know you want to get married. Hold on. Who's speaking now, Lewis?
This is God speaking, right?
And what did he call Jesus?
He said, your throne, O God, is forever and ever.
So the Father called Jesus in Greek, it's O Theos, the God.
What is it in Arabic?
Ya Allah.
Ya Allah.
Yeah. But in Arabic, they translated Ya Allah. But now finish it. Look what else the Father says about the Son.
The scepter of uprightness is the scepter of your kingdom. You have loved righteousness and hated wickedness. Therefore, God, your God, has anointed you with the oil of gladness beyond your companions. And you, Lord,
who's speaking again? Who's now saying, you, Lord, who's speaking? The Father, right?
Yes, sir.
And who is he speaking to, Lewis?
I'm not sure who he's speaking to here. He's saying...
Start at 8, to the Son. Show me. That's what
he's speaking directly to the Son. Okay.
Okay, wait. So you just acknowledge, not that you believe it. Go back. The Father just said to the Son, you, Lord, you, Son, are the Lord. And then look what he says about it.
You, Lord, laid the foundation of the earth in the beginning, and the heavens are the work of your hands. They will perish, but you remain. They will all wear out like a garment. Like a robe, you will roll them up. Like a garment, they will be changed. But you are the same, and your years will have no end.
So God the Father just said to the Son, you are the Lord that created the heavens and the earth. You control them, you change them, and you're unlike them. You remain the same, and you're the God who rules forever, and you're my Son, and all angels must worship you. Good enough for me.
It's very interesting what you're showing me, because how do the Jews interpret this? I mean,
the Jews are not Christian. They'll believe in the New Testament.
Of course not. But I'm just wondering, what is their explanation for this in Hebrews? I mean, I would love to know.
That's why you Christians are pagans. You're corrupt, and you worship 3 gods. And that's typical. But thank God there are thousands and thousands of Jews who are Trinitarian, who worship the Trinity and believe the New Testament. One of the leading scholars who's a Jew, who debates rabbis to prove the Trinity and Jesus is God in the flesh and Messiah, Dr. Michael L. Brown. Okay, my question to you, Lewis, is, just like you would say of me, it's not fair to insist that I have to show you, Christian, from my Quran where Isa says these words in the exact way. We accept the Quran, whatever it says about Isa, because that's Allah speaking, then I return the favor. It's not fair for you to insist to me that Jesus has to speak a certain way in my Bible for it to be true, because I believe my Bible inspired by God, and God is telling me, the Father is telling me that Jesus is God, the Lord, the creator, sustainer, who doesn't change. So it should be good enough for me.
So because of that verse, Sam, is that the verse that brought you to believe that Jesus is divine?
The whole entire Bible brought me to believe Jesus. That's what...
Yeah, I mean, you'll notice like the way that the Psalms are treated in that section of Hebrews 1 and the other places that the New Testament cites the Psalms, even Jesus himself, like for example, when he cites Psalm 110, it sets a pattern for how we interpret the rest of the Psalms. So in other words, the rest of the text, the Torah, the prophets, the Psalms, the writings, they become also gospel texts for us. This is something that I think people don't understand, especially from Islam. They don't understand that the Trinity is in the Torah. The Trinity is in Isaiah. The Trinity is in Ezekiel. These are passages that show us multiplicity in God at that time. So we're not inventing these things. These are in the text. The New Testament just backs this up and further confirms it.
Let me add one more example. You hear what he said, right? The entirety of the Bible leads us to worship the Trinity and that Jesus is God in the flesh, not just one or two, entirety. But I'm going to add one more example of Jesus in our Bible identifying himself God without having to use exact words. Here's some of the arguments that even from a Muslim perspective, it's clear that Jesus claimed to be God. For example, in chapter 57, verse 3 of the Quran, Surah Al-Hadid, we are told he is the first and the last. Allah al-awwal wal-akhir. It's there. It says he's the inward, the outward, first and last, and he knows all things. Do you see it on your own Quran, Louis?
I've seen this before. I read this verse before.
Okay, so you see Allah is the first and last. Now, no creature can say he's the first or the last, because first means he was there from the beginning, the first act of creation. He'll be there till the very end. And Allah or God can say that because God was there before creation, continues to be, and never ceases. So only God can say this. That's why no prophet says it, neither in the Old Testament or the Quran. You'll never find a prophet saying, I'm the first and last. So now I'm going to read something to you. The Quran says Allah is the first and the last. Now, I'm going to read to you Revelation 1:17. It says, when I saw him, I fell at his feet as dead. And he said to me, do not be afraid. I am the first and the last. So the one speaking says, I am the first and last. According to the Quran, who's the first and the last?
It would be God.
If Allah or God is the first and the last. And the speaker says, the one speaking to me, he says, I'm the first and last. That means the speaker is claiming that the first and last speaking to him, who would that be? The first and last, according to the Quran.
It would be Allah.
But then it says in Revelation 1:17-18, when I saw him, I fell at his feet as dead. And he placed his right hand upon me and said, do not be afraid. I'm the first and last, the living one who died. And behold, I came to life. I live forevermore, and I hold the keys of death and Hades. So when did Allah die?
He doesn't die.
But that's, you just said, the first and last is Allah. And that person said, I'm the first and the last. I died and I live forevermore. Well, we know Jesus died and came to life. So how dare Jesus claim to be the first and last?
Gosh, I mean, I would have to go into this whole thing with Paul and who.
It's not Paul, it's John.
You're saying this is in John?
Revelation 1:17-18 is John.
Okay.
Be that as it may, your Quran confirms that Paul must be a true apostle or Islam is false.
Or Islam is false. I mean, if you judge the Quran based on what is in the Bible, then I see your point.
No, I'm judging the Quran by its promise to Allah's disciples. Chapter 3, verse 55, 61:14, and what Islamic scholars said about those passages. 3:55, Allah promised Isa, he goes, Isa, I will cause you to die and then raise you to myself, and I'll make those who believe in you uppermost, superior to those who disbelieve, till the day of resurrection. 3:55.
And I think the way that the Muslims interpret that is his message. You know?
No, because I'm going to show you how the Muslims interpret. Qurtubi and Ibn Ishaq said that the true followers of Jesus dominated and were given victory to spread the message. But even we go with that. Let's go to your interpretation. The message triumphed, right? But 3:55 says his message will triumph till the day of resurrection. So then if Paul corrupted the message, that means the message got hijacked, Allah failed. So you're still stuck. Where's the message?
I see what you're saying. I understand. Sam, you are a book of knowledge. I mean, I wish I was as fast as thinker and as knowledgeable on you on both religions.
All glory to Jesus. That's the true God who gives us his gifts so that people like you will find him and enjoy him and live forever. But here I want to give you this article so you can go read what the Muslim scholars said about Paul. Here it is. Scholar after scholar said Paul was one of the messengers Allah sent with Peter and John and empowered to spread the message of Jesus, and Allah gave him victory. Muslim scholars, not me, Ibn Hajar, Asqalani, Ibn Kathir, Al-Qurtubi, right there. And scroll down, show how many sources.
Quite a bit.
Right? And then we quote them and give you the Arabic. Save it and go study. No, they'll hit a lot from you. Now, Louis, you're a good man. I mean it. You're very humble. And if you're humble, I promise you, it will be a matter of time. You'll come back home to Jesus. Because Jesus is alive, he is Lord, and the Bible is his word, and there's no good reason to stay Muslim. But that's your journey. And when you do come back to Christ, reach out to me and say, Sam, you prophesied. You said it.
I will study everything that you've talked about. I have it written down, and I promise I will look into it.
You got the links, right? To the articles.
Yes, sir, I do. I do have them saved. I promise you. Sure. So I guess the concept of Christianity is that Jesus died on the cross because God could not fulfill, or God cannot go back on his word, to man, because, Adam and Eve sinned. The wages of sin are death. So because of that, unless there is a sacrifice, he cannot go back on his word. So he has to send himself to save humanity. Am I understanding this correctly? Am I speaking clearly here? God is just, so he cannot go back on his word. Am I saying things correctly? I mean, I have a brother-in-law, his name is Cody, and he kind of mentions this to me sometimes. He says, God cannot go back on his word, and that is the reason that Jesus died on the cross for humanity. Am I understanding this, guys, correctly?
He wants to know, why do we believe that God had to die for us? So go ahead, Jay. It's more philosophical then. I'll say something.
Well, the salvation that we experience is not due to some sort of punishment that God had to exact on one person of the Trinity against another. We believe that it was an action of love. So it's not that God needed anything or he was thirsty for vengeance, and the only way to do it is if, God sends himself. What we think is that the second person of the Godhead, the Son, said that he would become incarnate to save and heal our nature because death entered into our nature through the fall of Adam. Adam essentially made a covenant with or linked himself to Satan. So he became partners with and linked himself to the devil. And that's why he was under the dominion of death. For us, that's death is not just a state of being. It's also an angelic realm, which is Hades. And so when Jesus came, he didn't just come to die, but to descend into Hades, destroy the power of Satan in that realm, in that kingdom, and then resurrect and heal our nature to be deified and to become sons of God. So it's actually a whole narrative that can't be limited to like what most Protestants believe is like the penal substitution doctrine.
Yep. It's just victory models.
Yeah, it's a victory model. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, I'm just so I understand. And you call that the penal substitution doctrine? Is that
Protestant doctrine is the idea of kind of what you were getting at. This idea that there had to be a payment between one person of the Trinity to another, and God's infinite perfection was offended by sin, and so he had to send himself to pay himself. That's not the Orthodox view of the death of Christ. We think it's an action of love to heal our nature and to also then deify our nature.
And it's true that this penal substitution, it was unheard of in the church until the Reformation, right?
Yeah, it's a Protestant doctrine that begins probably with Luther. I mean, you could find somebody who had you could say Anselm kind of anticipated it with his payment model, but really it ends up being the teaching of Luther and Calvin. It's not the traditional teaching of the church, no.
So in Islam, I mean, you just have to ask for God for forgiveness directly. Nobody has to die.
Oh, that's not true.
It's not true.
It's not true.
Jews and Christians will be your ransom.
Yep. So either you're speaking because you don't know much about Islam, and you bought into Dawah script. No, that's not true. According to your sound,
I like that hadith, by the way.
According to your sound narrations, Sahih Muslim, Allah will torture Jews and Christians as a sacrifice for your sin. So where did you get that Allah just forgives you? No, he doesn't. In fact, if he simply forgives you in the sound Sahih narrations, you're told that there are Muslims who spend time in hell, and then Muhammad will take them out of hell by his intercession. Why? If he forgave you, why are you going to hell?
Well, I mean, to me, that kind of does make a little sense, because if you sin, yeah, I mean, the fact that
he forgives you. So make up your mind. If he forgives you, how does it make sense you go to hell?
Well, we only say that God is the most merciful and the most benefit. I mean, that's something that's like Islam 101. This is the first I've heard of the hadith that you're quoting.
Well, show him the hadith.
I will look at them because I'm.
No, he's going to bring it up for you.
Still learning.
No, well, we're going to deal. So that means you left the Christ you don't know for Islam. You don't know. Pitiful, but can you want me to give you the article for that detail and bring it up? You see that, guys, if you notice the pattern with a lot of these guys who become Muslim.
I'd like to know, is it I'm sorry, Sam, I don't mean to cut you off.
They don't know much about Christianity. They reject it. They don't know much about Islam. They jump into it. And then when you confront their sources, well, I don't know, I have to study. So why did you become Muslim without thorough study? Now, do you have the article or do you want me to bring it up?
I got the hadith.
Okay.
I know that there's weak hadiths. I know that there's hadiths.
Sahih.
All of it is Sahih, Habibi.
Sahih.
We will never show you a hadith that's not authentic.
Yeah.
So it has to be Bukhari or Sahih, which
Muslim.
Sahih Muslim.
Yep.
2767a. It says, when it will be the day of resurrection, Allah will deliver to every Muslim, a Jew or a Christian, and say, that is your rescue from hellfire. Now, even the word rescue is sugarcoating it. In the Arabic, it's ransom. Yep. That's your ransom for hellfire. Oh, yeah.
No, according to you, because you're talking about justice. So now explain to us the justice of Jews and Christians being tortured in hell so that someone like you can be forgiven and be brought into Jannah.
Well, I will say that the justice, first of all, I don't know what context this is in. So again,
this is the context of the day of resurrection, brother. This is
day of resurrection, buddy. Let's not play.
And this is something that Muhammad said. I mean, is this?
Yes.
Allah's messenger
reported that Allah's messenger said, when it will be on the day of resurrection. And we could take it slow, like this is you never seen this before. We could take it slow.
No, never.
Yeah, it's all good.
Show them the other ones too. It's not only this.
Yeah. I'm gonna show them multiple. Let's read this.
Well, when you asked me a question, you said, "How is this just?" You know, when I think about it, I say to myself, "Okay, well, if I don't accept Jesus as God, as being a divine God, then I burn in hell. And in this case, if you don't accept Allah as the one true God, then you burn in hell." And I guess it's also
no, that's false analogy, because that's not what I'm asking. I'm saying, why does Allah have to torture me, a Christian, in hell to forgive you of your sins? So you didn't address it. Because that's
That
what
is your rescue from hellfire.
Yes. So Allah's going to save you from going to hell by throwing me in your place. Why?
Well, that's not just. I don't view that as being just at all.
He condemned Allah and his messenger. You're not a Muslim. I'm glad you said it. It's recorded. He just condemned Allah and his messenger. Sahih Muslim. So are you a Muslim?
Well, what you're asking me, is this just? And I haven't read the context, so I'm still Muslim. But what I'm saying is, what you're saying to me is that if this is the case, that Muhammad said that this is what's going to save us, is the Jews and the Christians burning in hell, that is peculiar. That is peculiar, and it deserves some attention.
Yeah, but Louis, let me correct you. You may say you're a Muslim, but when you say that is not justice, and it comes from a sound narration of Muhammad, you have now committed an act of kufr. That's why I said.
Well, then let me take those words back then as fast as I can, because I did not mean that in that way. I'm just saying, my first initial thought upon first looking at this is that it doesn't seem, to be what I've learned from other Muslims.
But notice what you have to do. You have to suppress your initial inclination here. You have to suppress that and think yourself out of what is obvious. You obviously have your first nature is to say, yeah, this is not right. This is unjust. But as a Muslim, you're like, oh, well, even though I know this is unjust, as a Muslim, that will make me a disbeliever. So let me take that back and, maybe not say that yet. Off firsthand that this is not just, this is not right.
And like I said, I agree with that statement off firsthand. I do have to do research. But when I think about Christianity in the sense that if you don't believe in Jesus, then you burn in hell. I mean, it could be that seems kind of similar. And, and again, I will do the research. If you believe me when I tell you, I just typed it into my notes and I will read in depth into this. Please show me more if you have more of these.
We have a lot more. But Louis, I just want to explain to you why it's not the same. Jews and Christians are going to hell because they're not Muslim. That's I can understand. So that's the equivalence of you saying, well, if I don't accept Jesus as my savior, I go to hell. The equivalence of that is saying, well, if I don't believe Allah is God and Muhammad is a messenger, I go to hell. The equivalence is not saying, well, Jews and Christians will be tortured in hell, so a Muslim can be saved from going to hell. That's not the same.
You're right. You are right in saying that.
That's okay. Listen, we appreciate that. We like honesty, but I appreciate you because you're very honest. And if you are, you will come back to Christ. But anyway, show them the others.
Yep. So this is the second one. This is, right, just the next hadith over. So it's Sahih Muslim 2767b this time. It says that Allah's apostle said, so Muhammad says, no Muslim would die, but Allah would admit in his stead a Jew or a Christian in hellfire. Right? Umar Aziz took an oath by one besides whom there is no God, but he, thrice that his father had narrated that to him from Allah's messenger. So he repeated this 3 times to him. So Muhammad says, again, just clearer, no Muslim would die except that Allah would place in his stead a Jew or a Christian in hellfire. So we will be taking your place so that you don't have to go to hell.
Can you show them the other one? There's another one right after that too.
And this one goes into a little bit more detail. So this is 2767d. Abu Burda reported Allah's messenger saying, there would come people amongst the Muslims on the day of resurrection with as heavy sins as a mountain, and Allah would forgive them. How? And he would place in their stead the Jews and the Christians. So as far as I think, Abu Rab said, I do not know as to who is in doubt, and yada, yada, yada. It has nothing to do with this. But
so there you go. These are Sahih. We can give you other versions, but you get the point. But anyway, you had some more question about Christianity? So
somebody has to pay for the sin, and I guess, in Islam, a Christian or a Jew is going to pay for the sin on our behalf. I mean, is that what this is saying? Is that kind of
what this is saying? Yep. Sinful Jews and sinful Christians are taking on the sins of sinful Muslims. How the heck does that work?
So someone has to pay a toll at some point, I guess. I mean, that is interesting. You learn something new every day, and I appreciate you guys showing me that. And I will do some.
Understand what Jay said? The difference between. Let me explain what Jay was telling you. And Jay can ask that in. It's different that I, against my will be tortured, humiliated by Allah because I'm not a Muslim, but also tortured and humiliated to suffer because of your sins, so you can be forgiven. And then Jesus, in an act of infinite love, deciding to come, remedy your fallen condition by allowing death to swallow, so he can destroy and swallow up death and destroy the realm of the dead to set you free.
I mean,
the rescue mission. Jesus comes to rescue you. Allah comes to then torture me to rescue you against my will. I didn't sign up for it.
It's not against your will, because if you've heard the message of Islam and you rejected it, then I guess you chose your path.
No,
you
no.
know,
Well-
I get this. I didn't sign up for Allah to torture me, not only for not believing in Islam, but torture me to save you. I can understand. So you're still not getting the point. It's one thing for Allah to send me to hell for not believing in Muhammad if Islam is true. It's another thing to say, not am I going to hell because I don't believe in Islam, but I'm going to hell so that you don't have to. I didn't sign up for that part.
I mean, like I said, and I will do more research on it, but you know, and hopefully you guys will have. I don't know how often you have these. I just happen to
Yeah,
stumble up
all
across
the
this.
time, brother. I'm live all the time. Sam's live all the time.
Yeah,
Jay goes live.
It's you.
We're live all the time, brother.